What if you could turn hundreds of everyday customers into your most powerful sales team without even paying for those traditional ads? Well, William Gasner did just that. He is the CMO of StackInfluence.com, where micro-influencers drive brand advocacy at scale. He's a 6-time founder, 7-figure e-commerce seller, and we are going to be talking about this amazing concept called using micro-influencers with your e-commerce brand, especially in this world that's flooded with the UGC, the user-generated content. How do we stand out? How do we avoid many of those pitfalls that we hear? We've always heard the stereotypes, the horror stories about influencer marketing. So how can we do all this without our brand wasting money? Well, Mr. William is here to help us out, to educate us. So Mr. William Gastner, glad to see you and glad to speak with you. Happy to have you. And so what did I miss there? What are the gaps to be filled in as far as yourself, your focus and passion? What are you up to?
You nailed the high-level overview, but I'll give you a little deeper dive into my backstory. So as you mentioned, been very much in the entrepreneurship startup world for a long time. My main focus was in tech startups, so co-founded a previous kind of marketplace. Weirdly, I've had a fascination with marketplace softwares, which is kind of crazy because they're like the hardest business to build with 2 different users. But Stack Influence is a marketplace business and love the challenge. But my other main kind of passion and focus has been in e-commerce. So have founded and run numerous different e-commerce businesses over the past 15 years, ranging from jewelry companies to cutting boards to teeth whitening to toys, and became a 7-figure seller on that journey. And throughout selling products online, utilized a lot of different influencer tactics to grow those brands, which really led me and my co-founder to build Stack Influence. And the big reason behind that was we used every single tactic on the gambit, right? Is from online ads to email marketing to SEO to influencers, right? And we found influencers were kind of the best bang for our buck, and also used different spectrums of influencers, which we can dive into a bit deeper. But what we found was these smaller creators, these micro nano influencers, what the industry calls them, mostly people with, and as a definition of less than 100,000 followers, really provided us with the best ROI. But we faced a bunch of challenges dealing with these people. One was very difficult to find enough people for our brand, right? Maybe finding 5 people wasn't that hard, but what we wanted to do for a lot of our e-commerce brands was find hundreds, if not thousands of people who are willing to promote the product. That was the first challenge. The second challenge, once we solved that first one, was, okay, we have 1,000 people who want to do promotions for us in this next month. How do we manage them, right? Like, how do we answer all their questions? How do we get product to them? How do we deal with all the back and forth logistics? And that posed even a greater challenge of even utilizing a huge amount of like virtual assistants and spreadsheets, etc. So what we started to do is actually build out our own internal softwares to actually automate a lot of the challenges that we faced, automate outreach to people so we could scale them up, automate a lot of the product shipments and the management, the communications. And that really just evolved into its own system and company in itself. And that was the birth of Stack Influence. So that's kind of the background there. But happy to dive into any other specific topics if I missed anything.
Yeah, and there's so much great advice just packed into that, right? That you kind of pursue those hard challenges. You say, hey, marketplace software, it's hard enough to get people to like use your software, but now there's like these 2 sides that have to be balanced. And you say, hey, I know what's also really difficult, e-commerce. That's such a jungle. And then you say, well, and then that led to building the software that kind of scratched your own itch, right? You said, like, as a stereotypical entrepreneur, you created all this chaos. You say, like, hey, like, the solution doesn't exist with the micro influencers and finding them and the back and forth and the VAs and the shipping and all that communication. And let's build the software that solves our problem. And we're not the only ones. Other people are frustrated with traffic in general, but also with their influencer marketing. And then we say, well, if the solution is to find more smaller influencers versus a few big ones where you're just rolling the dice, okay, but then how do we manage that? Well, cool. Now that is how we end up with Stack Influence, which connects brands to everyday creators. You automate your product promotions and scale up your brand awareness and online growth. And so as far as us getting more understanding about like how this works, as far as like pursuing the micro and nano influencers versus just regular influencers, like what's a good like example or success story as far as like someone's got some like e-commerce brand and product, they say, hey, the Facebook ads and the Google ads, I'm so frustrated, I want to try micro influencer marketing. How's that work?
Absolutely. Let's dive in. So let me give also a high-level definition of the influencer landscape before I go into all the details of the best practices for the micro-influencers. First off, influencer marketing started with these celebrities. And it's honestly, when people hear influencer, they think of the Sydney Sweeneys, the Kardashians of the world, right? The celebrities. And that was the basic and most logical path to utilize an influencer, right? Was that like someone has millions of followers, I give them a product to promote, I'm going to get mass awareness and sales. The challenge, or the kind of where the shift has happened in the past few years, is that a lot of these celebrities, even though there's clout that surrounds them and there's value to them, not to say that they're not valuable at all, but trust has diminished over time. People now know that these celebrities are getting paid enormous amounts of money to do promotions. And when you see that, it's very similar also to an ad, right? Like you see an ad online from a brand, you know that there's huge amounts of ad budget behind that, and it's less authentic and less trustworthy. And so what brands started to realize, including ourselves, was that what if we start kind of collaborating with kind of these everyday average people who might only have a few thousand followers, right? They're much more authentic. They have a trusted audience, and they have a very more limited reach. But again, if you can scale up those collaborations, if you have 1,000 people with 10,000 followers, right? It's 10 million total reach. The second thing that's changed in the last few years that's very important to realize is that social media platforms have evolved. And it used to be the case where follower base was the key metric, right? Like if you posted and had 100,000 followers on Monday, and by Wednesday, all of those 100,000 followers were on social media, pretty much most of them would have seen your piece of content. Now, maybe only 1% actually sees the content. A very small percentage of people who follow you, unless they're very engaged with your profile, will actually see the content that you produce. And the second big change or evolution was that social media now realized, hey, if there's a great piece of content someone produces, I don't care if they have 100 followers. If other people might like that content, and we show it to maybe 300 people and then to 3,000 and 30,000, all of them really engage with it, we're going to keep pushing it. So you have these profiles that have literally sometimes hundreds of followers that get millions of views. And so the landscape of social media has really become democratized to where basically anyone with a social profile can be an amazing promoter. Now, not every promotion goes viral, obviously, and that's where you really need to scale this out and diversify your risk. But it really made this power to these smaller creators, less than 100,000 followers, as I mentioned, that the now industry defines as micro or nano influencers, to where it's like the best strategy. And then on top of that, besides just the promotional side, you're getting content. It's usually cheaper. At Stack Influence, we actually built a model around what the industry calls product seeding. So we exchange a free product for social promotion and then reward people for the results that they get, as opposed to, I'm going to take a bet of paying someone thousands of dollars and I might get zero results. I might get great results, right? But it can be totally hit or miss. As opposed to that, smaller creators, a lot of the times, if you incentivize them properly, are willing to do an initial collaboration just for your product yourself. Oh. So that's basically the landscape of how kind of social media and influencer marketing has evolved. Now, if you're trying to get started with it, right, you can start small, like start DMing people within kind of your niche. Maybe you are selling supplement protein powder and you're trying to find people who are interested in fitness. Maybe you are looking for local demographics, let's say all in the US, maybe you search for people who are using the hashtag LA Fitness, right? LA Fitnesses are only in the US. Obviously, if someone's using it, they're probably interested in fitness. Find these types of people, come up with what we call an influencer brief, some sort of education on your product and your brand. What kind of product direction would you like to, or promotional direction would you like to push someone in? And then kind of reach out to them via DM, maybe at their email, and get them a product, get them to try to promote, right? You can start really small. The beautiful thing about micro nano influencers is you basically just need product. You don't really need any budget. And when you're starting out, it's very difficult. But even if you're an established brand, I mean, Unilever just this year announced that they're taking 50% of their entire marketing and ad budget and putting it towards influencers. So you can see how some of the most established conglomerate CPG, D2C brands in the world are realizing that their money is better well spent driving and creating this community of authentic advocates, you could say, as opposed to investing in the $billion bunch of Facebook, Meta, right? And Amazon and Google, right? So it's a crazy world now. Very not difficult to get in, but it becomes a challenge of, again, actually scaling and managing, which is where Stack Influence can help.
Ooh, yeah, it's bizarre, but also cool to think about. Just the way that the social media algorithms have just set up, but then also changed and evolved, right? That when it was less crowded, of course it made sense. Someone had 10 million followers to, over the course of a couple of days, show that to everyone, but it's so crowded. You go and your news feed is just so jam-packed, so the algorithm shows less of that. But then if you post something and it gets a lot of engagement, it keeps expanding, kind of allowing anyone, even with that small following, to just potentially go viral or at least get a lot of views. And so that in that sense, it does make sense to like kind of hedge the many smaller bets instead of the one big bet. And then also the kind of value that you're saying in like having all this established content, because we're all looking for, like, if there's a person or a company or a brand, you search them and you see what kind of presence is out there, right? You see, like, are there TikTok posts, X posts, YouTube videos, and if there's nothing, it's like, this person isn't even established. But there's like 10, 20, even more search results, like, okay, this is real. This person's actually getting out there. And so it's great to hear some of these revelations, ahas that you've had, where especially with the micro and nano influencers, their following is so small that you just many times just need to give them the product. But then the bottleneck there is in the scaling of it, the secret sauce. And so as far as, I'm sure you've seen some crazy stuff. Well, you already told us about some crazy stuff, but as far as like some brand that's used your platform, do you have a fun story to tell in that department?
Absolutely. So besides the kind of some use cases and crazy data that I've seen of just like profiles with literally like only a few hundred followers getting millions of views, which is just unbelievable to me. It's like that world has shifted so dramatically. Another really cool use case for influencers, for anyone who's listening, who's an e-commerce seller and specifically sells on an online marketplace. So think like Amazon, Walmart, Target, is the growth that can be implemented there. And honestly, search engine marketplaces anywhere. So I'll start with Amazon, and then I want to also just touch on actually how Google's changed in literally the last year. But on the Amazon marketplace, we see and have seen consistently some amazing growth from influencer marketing, especially micro influencers. And the reason being is that Amazon is a search engine similar to Google, right? It's just an e-commerce search engine. But similar to Google, when someone searches for something, I assume most of you listening have bought something at least one time in your life on Amazon. When you go and search a topic, about 75% of people do not go past the first page. And the top 5 listings, I think the stat is like 70% of the people, even on that first page, buy the top 5 listings, right? So when you first launch on Amazon or Walmart, etc., you're probably on page 5,733, right? Maybe 50,733. So it's very and you have zero visibility. Some people think, hey, I'm going to launch and I'm going to just instantly start making sales because half of every single e-commerce sale in the US goes to Amazon. But the bottom line is it's a risk for Amazon to show you at all near the top, because if your product is good, they're going to lose out on sales. They make commissions from every single sale that happens on the marketplace. And so the only way that they can determine where to position you is through data, right? Is when someone comes to the listing, do they convert? Do they add the product to the cart? Do they favorite it? Do they buy it and then leave a review, right? Like what actions do they actually take? And when they don't have any data initially, it's very hard for them to be confident to list your listing. So what we found though is that by driving influencer marketing, which naturally is a trusted form of promotion, right? Those sales are some of the most impactful sales on marketplaces like Amazon because they convert really well, even if they're small amounts of conversions. And what we've seen as far as e-commerce brands results is that I've seen brands go from page 100 to page 1, right? Just from providing Amazon the data from these high converting sales. And then all of a sudden, their literally ROI was like 15x, right? Because on page 100, they were barely making that many sales. I think they were doing like a few hundred sales a month. And then all of a sudden, once they got to that first page for this high volume keyword, they were making thousands of sales a month, right? And so, and I see that over and over again for brands that implement this. This is a kind of a newer strategy that's come out in the past 2-3 years, but amazing results there. And similarly, what we're seeing just this year is a new shift, and I'm going to assume that we're going to start seeing similar kind of search ranking results here is on Google. So Google just announced that along with Instagram, that Instagram posts will now start getting fed into search algorithms, right? And all the AI is also picking up on this as well. So the brands that aren't investing in a lot of kind of content creation, whether it's them promoting it or influencers promoting it, are really going to be left behind, because without that, all of the algorithms now are looking at that social data. They're looking at who's talking about it in the same way that you, Robert, mentioned, like that's how the consumer does it, right? It's like you look at X, you look at LinkedIn, you look at Reddit, right? Instagram, like where is your brand being presented? And that's the value to actually generating a whole bunch of content that now you have a plethora or war chest to repurpose on all these channels. But if you can get this kind of army of people to be promoting for you, it's just going to only help not only your e-commerce presence, but also your search presence, your presence within AI engines. And yeah, it's a kind of new Wild West, but content is king these days. And if you can scale it up, you can become kind of the next big brand.
Oh yeah, and it's so much fun to think about, right? Like in a lot of different contexts, when you think about like having affiliates promote your e-commerce product, or when you think about like even what you're doing here, right? Like you could be filming a bunch of little videos for a YouTube channel and making a bunch of posts and posting content and getting a few views, but you go to other people's shows, right? Get on other people's YouTube channels, you get backlinks. It's not all about you, it's about this army of people that you're assembling. It's a lot of fun to think about, right? It's like playing army figurines and setting up the different pieces on the board and saying like, hey, who am I going to lead into battle? What will this team be to help get the word out about my brand? But I imagine that there are ways to mess it up, right? Whether they try to do it themselves without your platform, or maybe even they use your platform, but they don't implement correctly. So with everything you've seen, what do you have to tell us about the mistakes, the missteps? Where might people go wrong with micro influencer marketing?
Absolutely. So first thing I will say that people go wrong is giving up too early. Because again, it can be hit or miss, like any influencer promotion. And better to hit or miss when you're giving away a free product than paying someone hundreds or thousands of dollars, right? So that's one thing, is like some people work with 3 people and they're like, didn't really drive that many sales. This is not for me, right? And it's a long game, and 2, look at all of the value that you're getting provided. So that's one thing that I see occasionally, is like some people just test it for themselves and say like, influencers are not for me. And like all of their competition just cruises by them and by implementing the same strategy, but actually scaling it. The second thing regarding if you believe in influencers and you realize that it's a valuable thing is not finding the right people, right? So you want to have people who align with you. I like to shift the term of influencers to passion promoters. Find people who are passionate about the niche that you play in and engage with those people, right? Because at the end of the day, again, influence is correlated with authenticity and trust. And so if you find people who actually exude a passion which is naturally authentic and trustworthy, they're going to actually be a great promoter for you. At least the odds are more in your favor. So finding that alignment. The next thing is, I would say some people honestly curate people's prompts too much, right? Like let people have their own creative control. Obviously direct them in the right way. Maybe you know that your product looks the best when it's actually utilized like in a video. Or you know that your boxing, you spend a huge amount of money on your packaging and an unboxing video actually works really well, right? Maybe prompt people with what you understand as being a high converting kind of video or graphic, but let them have the creative freedom to kind of curate it to their audience because they know their audience the best. And you'd be surprised with what people can come up with, right? Like put it out into the creative ecosystem. And then I would say kind of the last really tidbit of advice is, this is something that you don't realize for a while is like, as I recommended before, and what our platform focuses on is product seeding, right? Product compensation. Obviously, that's the cheapest way to go about influencers, as opposed to paying someone hundreds or thousands of bucks. You give them a free product. Fantastic, right? But you'll quickly realize once you find people who are willing to do this is the natural step is to say, hey, like you reach out to someone, they're interested in promoting for you. You're like, great, send me your shipping address. I'll get you the product this week. You ship them the product, and then what happens is like 20 to 40% of the time, it's just crickets. And you don't hear from them. You follow up with them, and you're like, hey, person, like, where's my social promotion, right? And they're like, oh, I'm going to get to it. Something came up, blah, blah, blah. And you end up never getting anything from them. And it happens much more often than you think. Like you lose a lot of inventory from a product seeding model. So what we actually shifted the model at Stack Influence to do, because we face this a huge amount internally, was we find people who are willing to become real consumers of the brands we work with. We used to do this ourselves. Like one, engage with your real consumer base. So someone who already bought your product, reward them after creating the content. If they don't do anything, there's no loss.
Right.
If you find someone new, get them to become a real consumer, right? And then once they complete that social post, say, hey, I'm going to give you your money back. Maybe I'll give you some monetary reward based off how the social post actually performed, et cetera, et cetera. Put some skin in the game, right? And that is another big pitfall a lot of people quickly realize once they start doing product seeding. There's a few others, but I'll leave it at that. Let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, and that's all helpful. Just like understanding human nature, and especially that skin in the game part, right? And we've all been there, right? If it's for free, if someone gives us something, it feels like a chore. But if we're earning it, or if we're already a buyer, a passionate user of it, then it makes sense that would get a better response, getting a better result. And so it's just my brain is just literally exploding with all the possibilities and these like kind of clever solutions that you provided. But because we only just met, and I only just now found out about stackinfluence.com and a lot about this kind of micro influencer space, I'm sure that there is a really good question that I could be asking you if only I knew what to ask. So in this conversation we're having, is there a missing hidden question that I should be asking you? I just don't know what to ask you.
You asked me some fantastic questions, but I will say the biggest question is that you haven't yet asked me is why Stack Influence? What if I don't want to do this myself? What are the options out there? So regardless of even Stack Influence as an option. An answer to that is that yes, there's a huge amount of ways to go about influencer marketing, right? Besides just doing it yourself. I always recommend brands just try to get their feet wet, manually doing something, just to see the pitfalls and understand the value of what other platforms can provide, right? So you're not biased basically by them. But there's really three pillars of different solutions out there that you can tap into if you're trying to really ease your way into influencers or really scale it out. The first is agencies, naturally. There's a lot of different influencer agencies out there. Now, the challenge with them is that they charge an arm and a leg to utilize their platforms. Also harder to scale, but at least they're dealing with the day-to-day logistics of managing everything. The second solution is software or SaaS companies. So there's a huge amount of kind of these database softwares, almost like CRMs, meaning that like they have a huge database of influencer contact info and then some tools to reach out to them. They charge a big monthly fee, but they do save you time and they can kind of save you on that outreach or identification part of the equation, right? Now, the challenge to those is there's no guarantee you reach out to 1,000 people that you even get one. So you're paying fees to access people, but you might not actually get results, right? Or even people responding to you, let alone results from the influencers. So can be really good if you have a big marketing budget and like you're trying to identify actually some of the larger influencers. Like I'd pay $1,000, multi-$1,000 per month if I'm going to pay $50,000 to a large influencer. I need to make sure that person is really good, right? Might as well use a database to sort through a lot of people to do that. Now with micro influencers, maybe much more difficult to implement. And that's where marketplaces or marketplace softwares like Stack Influence are a really good solution for the smaller creators in the sense that they've built out, like ourselves, a dedicated community of creators where they actually don't just have people sitting in a database with never communicated with them. They have like an engaged app and people consistently doing things, understanding the logistics and the process, and then also have the tools to not only tap into that user base so that you can scale, but also to automate the management, the logistics, have already faced all of those pitfalls before and are creating solutions around that. So those are really the three pillars to, if you're not trying to do something manually, you're trying to kind of outsource it or save some time doing it, where you should look.
Nice. And it seems like that's a really good solution because it's like it goes back to John D. Rockefeller, who said, well, if I had the choice between 100% of one person versus 1% of 100 people, I'll choose all those extra people because there's all this extra manpower. And we've seen those databases or those search tools where they say, hey, here's a directory, and we've never even met this influencer. We have no idea who they are, but here they are. Imagine if you used your phone to call an Uber and Uber said, hey, this person's never driven for us, but good luck. Who knows if they'll even show up to pick you up. And if they do, maybe it'll be dangerous. So it makes a lot of sense that you have this actual marketplace, right? Not just a CRM, not just a directory, but this excellent service you provide at stackinfluence.com, where they analyze your niche, carefully handpick authentic micro-influencers for your products, coordinate all campaign requirements, manage the creative timeline, and guarantee all social posts without inventory loss. So if someone says, man, a lot of what Mr. William Gastner had to say made so much sense about kind of splitting up the ad dollars into smaller micro influencers, to having like this army of people help me out, to then kind of think through the human nature of it. What's the next step here? Is it just to go to stackinfluence.com and create an account?
Absolutely. Yeah. Stackinfluence.com, top right-hand corner, click on the sign up button. It'll actually prompt you to get in a call with one of our influencer experts because we just want to understand your niche, your growth goals, make some recommendations based off what stage of growth you're in. And they're all very good experts in this world. So value that time. It's free. And once you get on a call, we'll kind of give you access to the platform. And then very simple to get started is like you set what your goals are, like how many influencers do you want to do? What's your time frame? What products do you want to promote? Upload a little product info and then sit back, relax, and let the platform deal with all the heavy lifting.
Very cool. Very awesome. Well, it makes a lot of sense to pursue this kind of like two-tiered ad system this way, especially if you've been frustrated in the past with Amazon ads, Google ads, YouTube ads, Facebook ads, all those other things where you say, well, I'm just like tweaking the numbers, but I'm not really seeing the results work out. Well, have this army of people helping you out. You can find them at stackinfluence.com, where you can get branded content, accumulate testimonials, strengthen your marketing materials, and generate traffic at scale with their micro influencer marketing platform. That is stackinfluence.com. But before I let you go, Mr. William Gastner, it's time for the scary part of the podcast where I try to stump you. I try to put you on the spot by asking about a fun quote or lesson that has served you. So what comes to mind as far as a fun quote or lesson?
Quick fun quote is it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. That most people, we see all of these success stories where startup companies, businesses, celebrities, like you become famous and millionaire in a year, right? And it's even becoming more popular with crypto and AI these days. But the real bottom line is the majority of the time, it takes a long time to build something great. And you see that where I say it takes 10 years to be an overnight success, you see the overnight success story, but you don't realize the time it took for someone or some company to actually get to the point that they're at. And it has resonated with all my businesses. Every single e-commerce business I was involved in, past startup companies, like it's led me to where I am today. And I've been involved in Stack Influence since 2018, so almost 7 years now. So we're almost getting close to the 10-year. Hopefully the 10-year is a success. But that's basically my quote.
I love it. Persistence and perseverance. And let's keep that in mind as we're growing our own e-commerce brand and using micro-influencers to do it at stackinfluence.com. We'll see you there. And thank you so much, Mr. William Gastner, for educating and entertaining us and helping us along. Stackinfluence.com. It's an amazing platform. Thanks for creating it.
Thanks for having me on.